Normally, this time slot in a BNI meeting is for us to explain more about our business and what we do. But in the spirit of the BNI Givers Gain, what I really want in this slot is to provide value for you all. So actually, what I would suggest is that you listen to what I'm saying, and if anything resonates with you or strikes you, please make a note of it for yourself. And just really hoover it up if you can, if there's anything useful in this. I hope there is. Because basically everyone here is a leader. We're all leading people that we know of, but also lots and lots of people that we don't know are watching us. But the thing is, it is not always easy to be a leader. It's not easy. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be cool and calm and collected and have all the answers. And of course, at the moment, leading through adversity is one thing, but leaders are also going through their own adversities as well. So it's a really interesting time, really challenging time at the moment, of course. So I'm going to give you 4 of my pillar tips and tools that will help you through leading through adversity. And this is always the one that I start with, resilience, because if you are not maintaining your own resilience, you can't look after everybody else. There's no doubt that building your health in advance and doing it as a habit every day will serve you really well when you need it. If we're malnourished or dehydrated or sleep deprived, then we are not, or if we're not replenishing our energy as much as we're using it, or it's taken from us, then problems seem insurmountable and bigger than they really are. The amount of stress that we're under in any day has to be balanced out with rest and recovery that day, not 6 months later. We can't put off rest and recovery until the weekend or until the pandemic is over. We really need to be ramping it up every day. It's like a bank. You cannot withdraw what you haven't deposited into the account. So it's really important. And crucially, what's really interesting is that we all know that we should look after ourselves, but actually psychologists are saying that the people who will emerge from this pandemic strongest and less likely to be suffering from depression are the people who are maintaining a flexible mindset, which means it doesn't mean sort of accepting and rolling over and just going with whatever. It's more around being open to whatever's happening, but acknowledging that you're strong enough to handle whatever's you're facing every day. So it's not, oh God, what'll happen today? It's, okay, I get it. This has happened today. I've dealt with stuff before. I can deal with this again. So psychologists are saying that if we can maintain that mindset, it'll carry us through. And my top tip here around resilience, if you want to write this bit down, is there's a multi-million-dollar market around you are worth it. Buy the makeup because you're worth it. But what I say to leaders is it's not just that you're worth it. It's not just your right to look after yourself. It's actually your responsibility to look after yourself, because if you don't, you cannot look after everybody else. And the other equally important thing is that if you're doing it, if you're maintaining your own resilience, you are role modeling it for the people around you, and not just people that you lead at work. You're leading also customers and clients as well, and your family and your community and your wider family, the in-laws and outlaws and all of those people. So if they're not looking after themselves, you have to show them how to do it. So it's a really, it gives people permission maybe to practice a bit of self-care when I say that really it's your responsibility to look after yourself. So don't neglect it any single day. The next pillar is empathy and fairness. There's lots of stories from 9/11 around managers who were compassionate at that time and humane to their staff, and those that weren't, and then paid the price in terms of staff turnover. And there will be similar stories emerging from this epidemic as well. Lessons from leaders at that time say that you just need to show more compassion than you think you need to, because we don't know what people are going through. And the way to do that when we're so distant and remote from people, because we can't be with them, is through conversations. Everything in the world happens through conversations or lack of. So it's really important to engage with people. There's a myriad of research and studies that show that when managers don't engage with their employees, the employees become much less engaged. And the employees who do have some one-to-one attention from their managers are 67% less likely to become disengaged. So all it takes is a phone call to say, how are you? And in fact, the trick for leaders is to step above our own responses and reactions and to keep contact with the people that are pushing back at us and are kind of difficult to lead. And then in terms of fairness, if you could be showing all the compassion in the world to employees and reaching out constantly, but if employees are sometimes not doing what you want them to do, and in the end you're the business owner, that you have to get results and outcomes, then I recommend the Just Culture model, because it gives you a framework of how to assess their behaviour and how to respond to it appropriately. If somebody's made a mistake, that's fine once. The sixth time is not a mistake. So it's a different response that's required from the manager. In relation to the honest mistakes, this is an area that I have a very personal interest in, and a very strong mission around this. This is a photograph of me when I was graduating as a nurse 30 years ago, a year before this was taken, when I was a student. I and 2 staff nurses were involved in a medication error. Now, the patient was fine, thankfully and luckily, but it is a very common thing. I haven't spoken to a healthcare professional that has said that they haven't made a mistake or a human error, and it is not something that you get up in the morning and go in with the intention to do. It is gut-wrenching. You get sick to your stomach after something has happened. And in fact, it was the system that let us down. We did everything by the book and to the letter, and the system let us down. And this is happening all the time. This was consigned to my cringe memory folder for the last 30 years. But in the last 2 years, I've become aware that it's more common than previously thought. It's a very silent problem. But society's blame culture has meant, and certainly in healthcare and in other sectors, there's far too high mental ill health and suicide rates in terms of people who've made honest mistakes. And these are just some of the headlines that I have from around the world of people who have not intended to do any harm, have caused harm, and then they have come to harm themselves. So in the Just Culture model, the person who's been harmed is looked after immediately without question, but also the second victim is the person who's made the mistake, the honest mistake, because essentially we are all human. We all make mistakes. We all drop our keys. Things happen to us. We forget things, but when society expects us to be perfect, it's a really hard standard to live up to. And this drives safety and learning underground. There's a lot of talk now about open disclosure. Vicky Phelan has really brought it to the fore in healthcare, but I don't see much about the 3 steps before that you can see on the left of here, that for open disclosure, to be able to say to somebody that something has happened and you know, you've been given the wrong medication or something else has happened, there has to be reporting of all incidents. And before that, there has to be psychological safety for the people to report, that they don't feel that they're going to be stigmatized or put out on unpaid leave or even lose their license to practice. And before that, there has to be trust. And that's where the Just Culture model builds up to that. And there's a business case for it. There are healthcare settings that have saved 1% of their annual budgets by introducing Just Culture. So not only the humane case, but the business case as well. So I'm very invested in this part. And on a lighter note, this is the kind of person that I want to, maybe this guy, but his manager, because his manager, this is the ideal person to refer to me, because this is the manager who has all the documents and policies in place, still can't get people to follow them, maybe worse, doesn't even hear about the mistakes or the near misses that are happening, and maybe has sleepless nights about this. They're the kind of people that I really want to touch base with, and I'm their ideal coach. So again, Just Culture is the model for that. So the top tip from that was really to be more compassionate than you think you need to be, and keep reaching out in conversations. The third tip is around anchored habits, and really it's a question to ask: what habits does the leader that I want to be have? And those habits then need to be non-negotiable, consistent, congruent with who you are, the values that you want to portray. And some examples would be delegation, although this looks more like dumping, but replacing one bad habit with a good habit. So it might be delegating, outsourcing. Does this task get me towards my end goal? Getting into the habit of thinking that. Switching off at the end of the day is a habit I work a lot with people to develop, because for a lot of people, particularly when they're working from home, it's a new thing. It's not new for me, but it's new for a lot of people, and it's a hard thing to do, but it can be done. And so that's the one tip from that, is try and replace one habit that doesn't serve you with one really good habit. And then the final one is, excuse me, to think about your leadership style. Because if I was to ask you what kind of leadership style you use, you might have to think about it for a while if you haven't really given it some thought and decided what kind of leader you want to be. Because we're all inclined to stay in our comfort zone, but sometimes we have to step outside and step into another way of leading that just isn't quite comfortable. So you might have to do some pace setting, you might have to be more democratic than you normally would be. So the top tip there is to try on a different leadership style for size, like a coat. In a context where it doesn't really matter, that you can just try it on, see how it goes, and learn from it, because you will always have to employ different leadership styles for different people and for different contexts. So that was a really whistle-stop tour of my Real Leadership Programme, which is building resilient, empathetic, anchored leaders. This a 4-week program. It's online over 4 weeks, and I've had it accredited for 7 CPD points. So this is ideal for people who need to gather the CPD points, but anyone who wants to do better in their leadership. The next dates are starting on the 3rd of February. I'm happy to extend the early bird if anybody wants to contact me today and organise that. I run about one a month. I've also applied for accreditation for follow-on coaching to that program, so for Real Leaders Masterminds. So if that comes through, and I think it will, anybody who has coaching in relation to that will get CPD points. So my ask for my BNI sales team, because this is why we're all here, is to train our sales team, and I'm so delighted with my sales team here. You're brilliant. Is really for warm, hot referrals into professional bodies, learning and development people, HR, and also warm referrals and recommendations for managers in safety critical areas, because I think I can really help them, particularly managers who've never had any leadership training and they're having to lead teams. And the thing to listen out for is, and actually I'll credit Eamon Walsh with this, he gave it to me yesterday, somebody who is expanding their team, or somebody who is now, has a new team to lead and possibly is a manager but has never had any leadership training. So the question to ask is, very simply, have you hired your coach yet? I always say that it's just a very simple question. It's a normal thing to have a coach. You're not insulting them by asking them if they have a coach. It's just, have you hired your coach yet? So they're my contact details, but I am findable all over Google, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to stop share there.